time. What's your main topic? Let's make sure it's packed with actionable insights.
All right, thank you, Jason. No pressure, $30 million in value in 30 minutes, but I think we can do it. My name is Dara, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Delphi, and right now, ChatGPT makes generic advice widely available. And in a world where everyone has access to near-free, instantaneous, personalized AI, it's easier than ever to be good at something, but it's harder than ever to be the best at something. Where's the alpha? How can you be in the top 1% when everyone has tools to be good? The alpha is in trusted curation from what I call expert minds. And so in this conversation, I'm going to talk to you about what a digital mind is and what I learned from having a million conversations with some of the top minds in SaaS. First, let me tell you how I got here. In 2021, I was the founder of an LLM startup, and at the time, LLMs were not sexy. Everyone was telling me to work on crypto or American dynamism, and I heard conflicting advice from all sides. But I was reading a book about my grandfather, who was the owner of a 30,000 person company in Iran before the revolution, before he got kicked out, lost everything, had to come to the United States with nothing, and built his life back. And what was unique about my grandfather was not necessarily his success, but his decision-making frameworks. And I wanted to be able to ask him, what would you do in my situation? And apply his decision frameworks to me. But I couldn't do that because a book doesn't respond, and he had had a stroke 2 years prior, so I couldn't ask him directly. But I ended up creating a digital version of him that I could talk to. And I was actually able to apply the way he thought about the world to an entirely new situation of AI that he's never heard of in his life. So I was able to adapt his knowledge to new situations. And that experience got me thinking about the experience of being a founder in today's age. There's a new podcast every day about a best practice. There's Twitter thought leaders, there's so many books on my bookshelf that I'm supposed to read in order to become a good founder. But none of these sources adapt to the rapidly changing market conditions we see today. They expire, and they're not personalized to you. And so with Delphi, we set out to create something that allows people to create a digital version of their mind, to scale one-on-one interactions, and give them the ability to repurpose old knowledge and apply it to new situations. How does it work? You can upload your data from many different sources, and we create a digital mind, which I'll get to in a second. And from there, people can call, text, or FaceTime you across any platform, Slack, Zoom, Discord, your website, and it will notify you whenever it doesn't know how to answer. It'll give you insights based on what people are asking. It'll tell you leads you should reach out to, founders you should invest in, based on your frameworks for evaluating people. So what does creating a digital mind actually mean? So you upload data from all these sources, and what we do is create your worldview, your decision-making heuristics, experience patterns that can be applied to new situations, mental models for navigating complex situations. And it's not always right. That's a thing that'll get better with technology. But an example of this would be if I were to ask my grandfather's clone, how would you think about starting an AI company? He built a business in a very uncertain time in Iran, and so those principles of uncertainty can now be applied to today, which is kind of an uncertain time where things are moving very fast. How do people use their digital minds? Some people use it at the top of the funnel as a new kind of personal website or content companion that can capture emails, answer questions, qualify leads. CEOs can use this as 24/7 customer support that leads to higher NPS because users are connecting with a version of a human. They know it's not a human, but it's a version of a human. We have CEOs using it internally to scale themselves for decision making, for new hires, onboarding and training. And then we have people actually monetizing their digital mind and making 7 figures in revenue as a new form of a book or a course. I think Jason already showed you a couple of his use cases, so I'll go over these quickly. It knows you and your product. It can actually sell your product as well. And Lenny, for those of you who are familiar with him, he uses it in the top of the funnel. Every Substack he writes, you can ask his digital mind follow-up questions, and then it will give him insights on what he should write about next, based on what's resonating with people. So 1 million conversations. Did I actually have 1 million conversations? Well, if you do the math, that would take 641 years. I did not have time for that. But you know who does have time for that? My digital mind. It can be in multiple places at a time, and it doesn't have the problem of speaking. It can speak immediately. So what we did is we simulated 1 million conversations with my digital mind and 4 other people, and had it report back to me on what the most interesting insights it could learn from these conversations relevant to SaaS founders. And we did this in 24 hours instead of 641 years. So I'm going to be going through some of those insights that we learned that I think are relevant to you guys here. First, I'll introduce our mind panel that I think many of you are familiar with. Brian Halligan, co-founder of HubSpot, advisor at Sequoia, pioneer of inbound marketing. Lenny Rachitsky, product lead at Airbnb, and one of the most renowned people in product thought leadership today. I'm a weekly active user of LennyBot. We have Keith Raboy, who prolific investor, operational experience at LinkedIn, Square, and PayPal. I had the opportunity to work for him at OpenStore. And the man of the week, Jason Lemkin, founder of saastr. So we will be talking and learning from some of these digital minds here and see what they have to say in different situations. And so what we learned is a lot of the advice that we get actually contradict each other. And an example here, what's your number one piece of advice for founders? Brian Halligan says focus on creating outsized customer value, such that your product is so valuable that it doesn't make sense switching to anyone else. Lenny's main focus is retention. Keith Raboy talks about inverting inertia, that the world doesn't want what you're creating, so time is your enemy until it is your friend. And Jason talks about don't quitting. The ones who survive are the ones who win. So the question is, do you listen to all of these, some of these, none of these? And who's right? The answer is, they're all right, it just depends on your context. So right now, this is generic advice, but by providing more context about who you are, you can get more specific, and the advice changes drastically. And from these 1 million simulated conversations, we found 4 dimensions that changed the nature of the advice that was given most drastically. Those dimensions were your stage as a company, your market context, your team dynamics, and where you are on the AI adoption curve. So first, we'll start with market context. Stage. I'm skipping 0 to 1 million ARR stage because I think most people here are past that. At the 1 to 10 million ARR stage, Brian talks about building a predictable growth engine. And Lenny talks about systematizing your growth levers, starting to build repeatable processes. Keith talks about making sure your unit economics make sense before you go to 100 million, because then you're just going to be losing money. And Jason focuses on hiring a great sales leader. At the 10 to 100 million phase, the advice changes a little bit, but it's mostly building systems. Brian's focus is about building a culture, documenting your values, building a system that can scale in your people so that you don't necessarily have to be in every room. Lenny continues to talk about building frameworks for decision making. And Keith talks about really being focused on metrics